All right, what's up? What's up? I am joined today with Matt of Pizza Yolo Harry. What's good, though?
Everything's good. Actually, I'm making pizza later today, so that's what's good dough. If you're asking me what's great dough, I'd say sourdough, long, cold fermentation sourdough. I think that's great dough. But what's good dough is I'm making pizza tonight for Katie and I, so that's what's good dough.
I love it. I'm going to have pizza today, but I'm not going to be making it. I'm going to go out and do some pizza crawling in a nearby city. But I like how you spun it on me and said, what's great, dough? I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that one, how I would answer it, but
Why sourdough?
that's a good question. So me, sourdough, I saw everyone doing it online, and I always thought it was kind of some big scary kind of thing to try to get into, because I was making normal yeasted doughs and whatnot, and I saw other people like Christy and Mike and them doing it, and I'm like, I might as well give this a try. So I I started to make a starter from scratch. Yeah, it took me forever. It was cold. I didn't understand it, but I got it going, and yeah, and I just kind of I was searching for like a certain flavor, and I just wasn't really getting it with yeasted doughs. Like it's hard to explain, and anyways, I got my starter going, and yeah, and I made that first pizza, and I had this moment, like, just like, oh my God, this is what I'm searching for. Like, this is the flavor I'm going for with sourdough. And ever since then, I haven't made I haven't made one yeasted dough, like I can't even remember the last time, like might have been April, May. I've been doing sourdough ever since, multiple times a week, just constantly. And I eat a lot of pizza, obviously. I'm sure you do too, like, yeah, like I'm eating it at least once a week, sometimes more, So like if I have something from like a chain or like Domino's, I feel like crap.
Right.
I'll eat like a whole large to myself, no problem. Like it's, I love
Same.
pizza. So that sourdough, like I'd have it and I wouldn't feel like crap after, my stomach would feel good. And that was kind of the main reason for it. And the more I dove into it, the more I kind of just became obsessed with it, and different flours in your starter and hydrations and techniques. And I just kind of went head first. I've kind of always been that kind of personality that's, I don't know if obsessive's the right word, but I definitely, I get into things, and I get into them heavy. You know what I mean? Matter what it is. If I'm into something, I'm into it,
That's really cool. Maybe you can help me and some of the listeners, because I have actually never been successful in starting my own sourdough. I started my sourdough through Scott Wiener. Actually, sorry, let me correct myself. In college, I started a sourdough by myself. It was through chem class, and they made us grow our own culture. And I followed their step-by-step process. But I threw away the instructions. Maybe there's a blog out there that maybe is iDrift Sourdough Journey on WordPress. But then in the pandemic, maybe you'll find it. If you find it, let me know. But during the pandemic, I started my own starter through Scott Wiener's IG story, and I followed it to the T, and I was unsuccessful. And so my current starter was actually a gift from someone else. And it seemed like you had some trouble getting your starter going at first, because due to the cold. But how did you end up getting it to the point where you were able to bake with it?
A lot of it was consistency. So my house right now, like it's cold. It's the middle of winter. It's -20 outside, blowing snow. I got thinner walls in my house, so it's chilly. And the big thing for me was, and I'd read different books, use all like 100% whole wheat, 50 unbleached, or 50 unbleached, 50 whole wheat, all that kind of different stuff, and the temperature, and trying to keep it warm, and multiple feedings and stuff. But the big thing for me was, and what I kept hearing over and over again, was to just stick with it. Like, it'll happen. Just stick with it. So it 2 months, or no, month and a half ish, it took me to finally get it going. And I had no clue what I was doing. But the big thing was I stuck with it, and I started to do 2 feedings a day. No matter how much it rose, I did 2 feedings a day. And that was kind of the thing that kicked it off. And once it was going, it was going. Like in the summer, and it warmed up eventually in spring, and summer came around, and I could feed that thing like 3-4 times a day. It is, It's really hot and humid here in the summer, and it's strong. It's going good now. So I'm really, really happy with how it is now. And I've kind of got it nailed down, taking it out of the fridge and all that sort of stuff. But the big 2 things for me was consistency and that kind of 2 feedings a day to get it going. That's what really got it going.
Okay. So that is a dedication and commitment to your culture. Do you ever take breaks from feeding it, or do you basically keep it on the shelf? Or your counter all day, every day?
I keep it in the fridge. I do, but I do take it out and I feed it twice a week. So there has been a couple of times where I've let it go longer than that, but I'd say 95% of the time I take it out. Usually I'm making dough. Depends what kind of style pizza I'm doing or how long I want to ferment it for. But usually I feed it Tuesdays and Thursdays or Fridays, depending on what I'm doing. If I'm baking bread, maybe. But yeah, I'll take it out. And one thing that I found too is the longer I left it in the fridge, the more sour it got. So, and I didn't like it being too sour. I'm a little bit particular with it, and I've been doing lots of reading and research as to why and the bacteria and stuff with it. But one thing I came across was the more frequently you feed it and kind of the less it sits there longer, the less sour it will be. It'll kind of have more of that, I like to say milky, some people say yogurty kind of flavor, but that's kind of what I'm going for with my sourdough, and that's what I really like. So I'll feed it, before I bake, like say Tuesday, I'll take it out the night before, I'll feed it before work, and I'll feed it maybe Tuesday night or Tuesday when I get home, and then I'll make dough in the evening. I like to do a couple feedings before I actually use that starter, and I find it cuts down a little bit on that tanginess, that sourness. I like a little bit, but not too much.
A couple feedings outside of the fridge, like as soon as you revive it or refresh it. What word do you use there?
I don't know what the term is, but okay. Like I'll let it warm up. So like, say it's in the fridge, I keep an eye on it when it's in the fridge. So I'll notice it rising in the fridge, and it doesn't usually hit. I got markers on the side of my jar, so it starts around 8, and it'll usually get up to 20 ounces in the jar. So it'll usually get up to like 16, and once I see it peak there, I usually got 2 days before I'll say, okay, I'm going to feed this thing. And what I'll do is I'll let it sit out and I'll let it warm up completely. It usually has a bit of a second rise to it. And then I'll actually start to feed it to use it in my sourdough. And when I do that, it kind of cuts down on that acidity when I'm using it a couple of times. I'm no expert on it, obviously, but how I've kind of came across doing the approach I've taken with doing my dough is I don't like to follow recipes as much. Maybe I'm just stubborn, or I don't know what it is, but I like to experiment and I love to test it out for myself. So like, I'll see someone do something or a trick or maybe a different process to develop gluten or whatever, and I'll say, I'll do that, and I'll test it out, and I'll just try different things. Like I love experimenting with it. And like I said, I don't necessarily follow recipes too much. My climate, I got 2 extremes, right? It's either hot and humid or it's freezing cold and dry. Like it's all over the map. So I feel like, doing it myself and trying to figure it out and feel with that dough, that feeling, that look, that smell is a big one for me. You can usually kind of smell that tanginess, that sourness. So if I take a whiff of my starter and I'm like, this is a little bit too much for me, I'll feed it a couple more times before I use it.
I love what you said there, because one of the pet peeve questions that I get from bakers who are less experienced than I am, because I'm not all that experienced, but I see it especially in the Uni Facebook group that you and I are in, or just random questions on Instagram. How do you make that? What's the recipe? But your recipe for dough and the timings for it are going to be completely different from the way I do it, because you're over there in Canada freezing sometimes, and I'm over here, on a nice 50 degrees in the wintertime.
Yeah, it must be nice.
But such a great point. Do you notice that your sourdough culture smells a certain way prior to peak, at peak, and then post peak?
I don't smell it actually when I first mix it and while it's going. So I'm just, usually I'm busy, I'm at work, I'm doing other stuff. Sure. I'm not paying that close attention to it. But when I do notice the volume, like I know roughly where it'll be on the jar when it peaks. So that's when I'll start to give it a smell. And when it peaks, it's generally got that kind of more milkier kind of smell. And then post peak, when it starts to drop, you'll start to notice that hint of acidity kind of smell coming into it. Once I kind of get that acidity smell, it's usually when it starts to drop.
Okay. So do you think that, do you use the same feeding amounts each time then? Because you mainly rely on volume? Yeah, I do. So I always do 50 grams mother starter. I do 50 grams whole wheat. I do whole wheat bread flour, actually. I notice a lot of people use all purpose. I like to do whole wheat bread flour and unbleached bread flour, 50 grams. So 50 grams of each, and then 100 grams of water, usually around 90 Fahrenheit. I'm pretty good on the tap now. I can kind of get that feeling when it's close to 90. That's cool. I used to measure it every single time and I was driving myself nuts, but I'm kind of good with the, the touch sense there, but that's what I do every single time. So I'm very consistent with it, and I watch it. Sometimes I let it sit out longer just to see what happens, see how it smells. Other times life gets in the way, and then, it goes up, it drops all the way. It kind of gets that liquid on top, and I'll give it a smell and see what does it smell like at this point in time. Like some other stuff I did when I first started sourdough is I was really worried about overproofing because it was starting to get into the summer once my starter kicked up. And I was really worried about it overproofing because I'd heard, when it overproofs, it gets really sticky and it tears really easy because of the acids in there. So one thing I made an extra dough ball one day and I just let it sit out for hours, like just to see what would happen. And I let it sit out for an extra 5 hours, I want to say. It was a hot day. It was like 30 degrees Celsius. And I let it just sit there and see what happens, see when it rise, see when it started to fall. And then once it started to fall, I was like, hey, it's definitely overproofed. And I stretched it out just to see what it would feel like. I feel like that's a lot of, I feel like that's a good way of me learning through experience rather than through recipes. And like kind of going back to that is I've listened to a lot of episodes, as you know, and kind of, like one thing I picked up on and something I don't really have experience in is working in a pizzeria, but all those people talking and working in the pizzerias, they say experience, when you do that hundreds of times a day, every single day, 7 days a week, you get that experience. And I feel like following recipes, you don't necessarily get that hands-on kind of sense to it. So I'm trying to do it as much as I can. I do it as a hobby, but I'm making pizza twice a week and I'm not wanting to follow the recipes. I'm wanting to feel it. I'm wanting to get those reps in, to make the mistakes, right? So that's what I'm trying to do to improve rather than following recipes. I do get people ask me all the time, what's my recipe? And I'll send them, I have it in my notes and I'll send them different recipes or whatever. And just say, hey, like experiment, try it, leave some dough out and see what happens to it, I like that. I actually really love that a lot because you're right. Listening to this podcast isn't going to make you a better pizza maker, but taking the lessons here and applying it and figuring it out for yourself will. So just going back to that whole, like letting it rise or overproofing after 5 hours, when you stretched it, did it end up ripping? It did, only because I pushed it. So I was careful with it. I stretched it out. I think I ended up like tossing it or flipping it or something. And that's when it ripped. But I was able to feel, like how sticky it was. I needed to add extra semolina and flour to it so it wasn't sticking to my fingertips. And, how that air pushed to the crust and stuff, it was different. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was very different. And compared to what it was 3 or 4 hours ago. Yeah. I like to learn through experience, hands-on. It's definitely the way to go. And maybe it's just kind of how I am. I like to apply principles rather than following something by the book. Yeah. That's great. Like I was thinking of this, like, as you were talking about it, it seems like that's a very, like, have you heard of first principles before? It's like a lot of things that they just get to the basis or the foundation of things. And they kind of just like, it's a lot of just learning what the foundations are by experimenting yourself and figuring it out and then building off of that knowledge. I feel like, yeah, that's a great way of approaching pizza.
Yeah, there's like kind of going back to when I first started making dough and making pizzas, I felt like I had too much information and no kind of experience. You know what I mean? I would read things, don't put sugar in the dough, don't put oil in the dough, do this high hydration, do low hydration. I'm like, what's hydration? I'm going through all these different things. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. Like, yeah, for the first few times I made a yeasted dough, I put a pinch of yeast in some water. I mixed some water together and I mixed it with flour. I didn't measure a single thing. I put a couple pinches of salt, threw a couple glugs of olive oil, and I just would make it in my home oven. Like, that's what I did at the start. Cause I was like, this is it. I'm just going to dive into it and try it. Like, what's the worst? And I did more research. I learned about hydration. I learned about baker's percentages. I learned about sourdough. And then I kind of went, I got super obsessed with it. I guess that's why I'm here, right?
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm glad. It's definitely easy to get overwhelmed when you're first getting started. And I think it's a fair time to ask, like, how and when did you and why did you get started?
Like, I've always loved pizza. I mean, I eat a full large by myself, like I said earlier. So yeah, I was always eating pizza. Like, if you go on my page, there's a picture of me when I was 7. It was my first pizza I ever made. It was at a pizza hotline. My cousin's uncle owned the place and it was one of their birthday parties. I was like 6 or 7 years old. There's this picture of me reaching up into the oven, putting the pizza in. It was just, it's a moment that's like, stay with me forever. And I eat pizza every week, every Friday. And like, why I got into the Instagram thing was like, I was just sitting there one day and talking to Katie, my fiance, and was like, I should just like take some pictures of these and post them online. And like, this is at the point where I was just throwing flour and water and yeast together and seeing what happened. I was like, I might as well do it. I mean, like, I'd see pizzas online and especially the Neapolitan ones. I would say, I want to try and make that pizza. Like, that looks really good to me. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start taking pictures of my pizza and getting involved in the community and stuff like that. And I was a little bit hesitant at first to do it, but Katie was the one that really kind of not pushed me to do it, but encouraged me and said, hey, like, you love doing it. Like, why not? I just started posting my pizzas. They're not great. You can see them, scroll all the way to the end. They're not awesome, but they tasted good and it was fun. Like, the main reason I did it is because I love it and it's fun. Like, that's why I do it. If it's not fun, I'm not doing it. Like, I love making pizzas. I love researching the dough and trying new things and experimenting. Like, I love it. And, it's fun to engage with people. Like, I came across your podcast. I told you how I found it, like, I just Googled pizza podcast because I wanted to learn more and kind of be more involved. And yeah, it's fun. And that's the main reason I got into it. And I think pizza should be fun. Like, I get comments, some people, they love to tell me my pizzas are burnt and whatever. It doesn't really bug me. It's funny. Like, I love char on my pizza. I love it. I love that char flavor. I've always have. And Katie loves it. She loves it more than me. I mean, if I don't, I would call her pizzas that she likes. I'd call them burnt. Like, that's what she likes. But I make pizzas I like. Like, they're not too fancy. I've been really into coal fired lately. Yeah. But yeah, it's fun. Like, that's why I'm sure you have fun doing it. I'm sure that's why you do the podcast, like, it's fun to be involved.
I really do love it. It sparks a lot of joy. Last night, I was hanging out with a few friends and, all I could talk about was pizza. Because I just love it so much. And maybe it's like weird in an obsessed way that I can no longer talk about anything else. No.
We're hanging out with Katie's parents or friends and she's like nudging me like, okay, it's time to stop talking about it. Like, like, you don't need to talk about it. No one cares about your dough anymore. Like, that's it. Like,
let me like say, I don't start the conversation by saying, hey, did you see my last pizza? They're normally like the ones to bring it up first,
Yeah, yeah. Usually, they'll ask me how the pizza is, and I'm like, yeah, it's good. And then they just open up a deep rabbit hole. It's it's like you shouldn't have asked me.
You asked for it.
Exactly.
Well, I'm sure they see your obsession and growth on Instagram. And do they ever ask you if you want to open a pizzeria? Because I get that all the time.
Yeah, I think I've asked you that actually way back in the past, but yeah, some people do, and I don't want to open a pizzeria. No, I have an awesome career. I love my job. I work in the engineering field, and it's something I'm quite passionate about, and something it's been 9 years I've been working towards getting my final designation there. So no, a pizzeria is not in the plans for me, but as far as goals and what I want to do with it, I ask myself all the time, like, what do I want to do with this? Like, it's kind of starting to grow and take off and stuff. So as far as goals go, like, I ask myself this all the time, and I never have a good answer for it. I asked Katie, I was asking her parents last night, like what should I do? Like, it's starting to kind of grow a little bit and pick up pace. And I ask myself that all the time. And I think, as far as what I want to do with it is, I've been talking about how I love experimenting, and I love, trial and error and figuring it out myself, feeling the dough and stuff. And I've kind of been working on a lot of developing my own recipes and stuff. And I think maybe having, like a collective, like a compilation of all my recipes over time, gradually kind of doing that. I think, as far as hard measurable goals, engineer, so I always got to have those hard measurable goals, like a finite, okay, I did it. Like, I think I just started making YouTube videos and stuff, and I love it. It's so fun. It's challenging. It's difficult. I hate hearing my voice all the time on camera after. I don't know how you do podcasts, but yeah, like, as far as measurable goals, I think I want to maybe have like a X amount of videos done by the end of the year, maybe like 5 or something like that by this time next year or something like that. I think, and quality videos, like informative to help people, get into sourdough, because it's not as scary as it seems, and it's yeah, I think it's easier than dry yeast, to be honest. Long term, I think would be to have a compilation of all recipes and stuff I've developed. Like, I'm working right now on, I keep mentioning it in my posts, a 5-day sourdough recipe. And I've been working at it. Right now it's a Post-it note on my fridge. So like, I've been really working on that one hard, and I think I'm going to do a video at some point on how I do that. And because it's different. So like, when I'm doing it's kind of coal-fired Neapolitan style dough, but that recipe, more or less the same quantities as, 72-hour, 48-hour dough, but like the steps, the process of how I do it is quite a bit different. And I guess I can elaborate on that. So like, it's going to sit there a long time. So it's going to get, it's going to have a pretty good tang to it. And I don't want it to get too tangy. So, I'll do a shorter bulk ferment. I'll do a lower hydration. For that one, I do, I think I do a 58% water, I think is what it is. I have to check my sticky note on the fridge, but 58% water. I cut that down on the levain a bit, 11, however you pronounce it. I think the total hydration is like 60, 61, 62-ish. And like, what I'll do for that one is nothing fancy. Like, I'll pretty much just mix everything together, let it sit 25 degrees Celsius, oven with the light on usually. I use my infrared thermometer to measure the temperature, and I'll let that sit for 3 hours, like only 3 hours. I'll ball it, and it sticks in the fridge till it's done. Like, that's kind of a no fuss sort of a thing. But if I'm doing, a 72-hour dough, that one's not going to sit there as much. It's not going to get as tangy. You can mess around a little bit with those higher hydrations, I find. It's got a different amount of leaven in it. And yeah, so like, maybe I'll do stretch and folds for that one rather than just, so for the 5-day sourdough, I kind of knead it for about 10 minutes, either a mixer or hand. But with a 72-hour dough, I'll do stretch and folds. I'll kind of mess around with it a little bit. I'll do a longer bulk ferment to kind of help it get along. So yeah, like there's different aspects and things that I like to mess around with and play around with and see how that impacts the dough. You know, I used to keep a journal. I call it my sourdough diary. But I've lost it since, so it kind of sucks. But I used to, you know, measure the temperature every single hour. And one thing I would always do, if you know, little tip, if you're measuring the temperature of it, a lot of times people measure it before they start doing it, before they do stretch and folds or whatever. But I always measure it after, because the interior dough temperature is going to be different than the interior dough temperature is going to be different than the exterior. So if you measure it before, you'll notice the outside, that skin of that dough is usually a little bit warmer than what's inside. That's something I kind of do as well. But yeah, like I used to measure the temperature like crazy, and that's part of the process of how I learned, and I've started to grow and get better at doing it. You don't have to do that, obviously. It's just, I'm a bit of a stickler for the details. Like I tell you, man, I have a scale that goes to 0.00 grams. Like I measure stuff out, like, you know, I'm very particular and stuff. So that's why I track the temperature much. But now I don't do it as much. Like I'll check it periodically. Like I got some dough sitting out right now for after, and it's probably a little bit warmer than it should be, but yeah. I don't know. I like to mess around and change the stuff up.
What do you hope to achieve in terms of flavor from a 3-day sourdough to a 5-day?
Usually when I'm doing a 72-hour, 48-hour, 24-hour, I'm usually doing a coal-fired pizza. If I'm hitting that 5-day dough or 5-day fermentation mark, I'm usually doing a Neapolitan style. So with Neapolitan style, you know, the quality of the ingredients and stuff is quite important. And you know, I know the AVPN rules and stuff like that, and 5 days is way too long for that, but it's how I like to do it, right? So usually when I'm doing a 5-day dough, it's for a Neapolitan style. So I'm doing like a marinara, a margarita, something very simple where that flavor of that dough. So it's going to be a little more tangy. I know I was saying earlier, I like that milkier flavor. So that's what I stick with the coal and stuff. So I normally do, but it's going to be tangier and it's going to stand out more. So like you're going to have your San Marzano tomatoes, your fresh mozzarella. It's going to be a little more minimal, and that dough flavor really kind of stands out and kind of takes a pizza from, you know, just kind of like a standard kind of pizza. It really elevates it. And physical appearance wise, I find, it does get better leoparding the longer you let it sit, obviously. I'm not a huge fan of leoparding. It looks awesome. It looks super cool, and it's a good feeling when you get it. But as far as flavor and stuff goes, I don't think it really adds too much. But I do like a 5-day sourdough for Neapolitan style with kind of minimal toppings and stuff like that.
You mentioned earlier sourdough is easier than yeast. How so?
Easier might not be the better word. It is easier if you understand how it reacts to the temperatures. So a yeasted dough, like you put that thing in the fridge, once that yeast gets going, it's going, and you know, you can say it goes a day or two extra, it can turn into a balloon, right? Like it gets huge. So with sourdough, like it changes a lot with temperature. So you put that in the fridge, it can sit there for a good amount of time. And the amount of leaven that you put in there, it affects it, but it doesn't affect it as much as if, you know, say it was dry yeast. So that's kind of what I'm coming from when I say that. So like if I did a 5-day yeasted dough, I've never tried it, but I've let stuff go 4 days with a yeasted dough, I think once before. And it got huge, right? Like sure you can punch it down and reball it and stuff like that. But I find sourdough, if you can control the temperature and the environment, I guess, which is a little bit more challenging, but if you can control that temperature and environment and understand how that works, I think you can get a much better product. For my bulk fermentation, I like to ferment my dough at 25 degrees Celsius, like give or take, right? A little bit. So what I'll do, and part of the reason I do that is because it's so hot in the summer here and so cold in the winter. I find it's a good way to kind of balance between the two. So in the summer, if I leave it on the counter, it's it's going to be like 23, 24 degrees in my house. It's going to be warm. I can put it closer to the wall. It'll be warmer. In the winter here, I'll put it in my oven with the light on, and I'll just kind of monitor the temperature every few hours. Sorry. So that way I kind of keep it at 25 degrees Celsius. It's not really hard to do, but it makes the dough really predictable, right? So I'll keep that. My fridge, your fridges are pretty much, 2, 3, 4 degrees, depending on where you keep it. And that doesn't really change much. Like I use my fridge downstairs. I think it's the beer fridge. So it just sits there full of beer and full of pizza dough, right? So like if you can control that temperature and and you can watch how it behaves to that temperature, it's super simple. And like keeping it, bulk fermenting it in the oven with the light on it's not hard to do, right? It's something anybody could do. You don't need to have like a Broad & Taylor bread proofer or anything like that, as much as I would like one. But
when I was doing yeasted doughs, I was only trying to use the smallest amount of yeast, as little as possible, so that I can push out my fermentation. But I feel like with sourdough now, like you said, get the bulk done, do some stretch and folds, and you're putting it in the fridge and you're chilling, and you can kind of just you can buy yourself time.
Yeah, you get a little bit of wiggle room with it.
Yeah, that's well said. Well said. And then I think, you had mentioned to me in the past that you are a very active person. You did some rugby, and part of the reason why you did sourdough was for the health reasons too. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, like I don't know too much, biology is not my kind of thing, but as far as like the health goes, like I'm fairly active, like I exercise quite a bit, like 5, 6, 7 days a week. And by that, I mean, like I got a little home gym downstairs with some dumbbells and elliptical, but it makes me feel better. I don't feel as crappy. Like I said, I eat a lot of pizza. I'm definitely not like packing on the pounds or anything. So like it helps, like using that, it's naturally leavened. It's got that LAB in there, that lactic acid bacteria. It just makes it more digestible, and you feel better eating it. And like me and you were eating lots of pies. It's good, and like I've told you this before, but when I'm on the elliptical, that's kind of I call it my networking time. Like that's what I'm doing my Instagram stuff usually. Like I'm hammering away on that thing, just dripping sweat, and I'm, and replying the comments or doing whatever. My post this morning, I was on the elliptical, the thing was going off. Nice. And I'm typing away at my caption, and yeah, like I feel like sourdough, it's easier to stay in better shape if I'm eating as much pizza as I'm eating. It helps being sourdough.
Before we get on to your Instagram comments and growth, I actually wanted to just say that the reason why I fully committed to sourdough, I think back in September, was I was talking to Mike from Rose Hill, and he was like, dude, if you eat sourdough pizza, you can eat more pizza without getting a gut. And I was like, tell me more.
Yeah, exactly.
But he basically said that like the reason for this is because your sourdough, your culture is actually breaking down all that sugar in the dough for you. And so your stomach has less work to do, and it's easier for that digestion. So it's not like getting stuck in there. Again, neither of us are biology majors.
No, that makes sense though. That makes sense. And I'm like, if anybody listening knows of a good book on this sort of thing, please let me know. Like I want to dive like deep into the science of it. I've been watching lots of YouTube videos and stuff on it. So if anyone knows of a good book, let me know.
What other resources have you been looking at? Because you said you were kind of nerding out on it before. Other than YouTube, is there anything else that you recommend for people to learn more? Yeah,
starting out, I absolutely love Mike with Rose Hill Sourdough's ebooks. I have both of them, and I refer to them very, very regularly. They have like awesome recipes if you're starting out. And I message him here or there, and I don't really know him too well, but I've listened to his episode of the podcast 8 times. If he's listening, I'm not a stalker. I swear. I like the episode. I listen to it all the time. And like, yeah, his ebooks are absolutely awesome. There's tons. He's got the pizza one and the baking one.
Yeah.
They're both awesome. And,
Yeah.
you know, I feel like
Excellent.
his baking ebook really helps. He talks about bread. So if you're doing pan pizzas, you want that higher hydration stuff, there's tons of good info in there for you.
Great. Perfect. I don't know if the code still works, but use code WGD at checkout and get $2 off maybe. So check that out. It's a great freaking book. I use it all the time. Shout out to Mike. Thank you for making that thing. I think now is a fair time to talk about your Instagram growth because this is insane. Like it's like you have just grown so much on IG and everyone wants to know how.
Yeah. And like, I got no idea. I mean, I got like some theories, obviously, but you know, there's some luck to it. Anyone who says they figured out the, you know, the algorithms or whatever, you know, they're lying. They got no clue what they're talking about. I see that everywhere. Everyone's like, I figured this out. And I'm like, okay, whatever. No, I don't know. Like it is fluke. Like obviously it's a little bit of luck, but you know, I've got some different ideas. Like, you know, the reels is to account for a lot of that growth, obviously. Like, I mean, the one's got like 1 point something million on it. I don't know how much. I don't look at it too much, to be honest. But yeah, like, you know, there's different things you can post on Instagram. So there's like the pictures, the reels. They have IGTV. I haven't used that. I use YouTube instead of that. But like, yeah, so like I said, reels attributed to a lot of that growth, and the majority of people following the page, you know, they're private accounts. So I'm assuming that they're pizza lovers and home bakers. And I assume that's why they follow. But yeah, so like the approach, I guess the only thing I can really say is the approach I take to reels, I guess, and something's working. So I guess, you know, take it with a grain of salt. I don't know for sure, but like when I'm posting a reel, it's just kind of, it's the same clip. I'm sure everyone's seen them, you know, I'm just pulling a pizza out of the oven. It's hot and it's steaming. So I'm trying to keep it short, like, you know, less than 10 seconds. And kind of that first one that took off, you know, it was back when TikTok kind of exploded. And I was like, oh, like what? I didn't have the app. I just heard about it everywhere. And I noticed Instagram introduced this Reels feature, and I was like, oh, I should, you know, give this a try and stuff like that. And I didn't really know what to post. So I just posted like this short little, this video. I was at it's a terrible video, but at least I think it's not very good, but it's just me pulling a pizza out, of my Carry 12 at the lake. Like it's raining. You can hear like ding, 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 tin on the roof, or sorry, rain on the tin roof. And Katie's mom's in the background yelling, just going like, oh, or just making some noise or something. But like you take that thing out and it's just hot and steaming, and it looks appetizing. You know what I mean? So when I'm doing these reels, like I'm looking for something short. So less than 10 seconds. It's usually just me pulling the pizza out of the oven, and something where, you know, someone if it's coming across on their For You page or something like that, they're like, oh, that looks good. Like, hey, I should show this to, you know, my partner, or send this to my friend or whoever. And that's kind of the approach I take with it. Like, you know, no one, at least I have TikTok now, obviously. Like if I'm scrolling on there, if something's more than like that 10-second mark, there's no way I'm watching it. I'm just moving on. You know what I mean? If something's short and it's funny and it captures my attention, you know, I'll follow, whatever. So that's kind of like what I'm doing with it, is something short, catch their attention, and, you know, hopefully they like it and they go check out more. And like, and I don't post them all the time. Like I do like one a week, one every couple weeks, maybe a reel. I love posting pictures. I love pictures because people read the caption, and I can kind of explain. Maybe I'll have a dough recipe or something I tried, or a different topping or combination or something I liked. So like if I'm posting a picture, I'm usually trying to highlight something that I found interesting. If I'm posting a reel, it's usually just something that capture people's attention. Really, it's nothing crazy. And if I'm trying to teach somebody something, I've now started to do the YouTube videos. So I feel like I've I'm no expert, but I've gotten enough hands-on experience where I can say, hey, this is, and it's not saying this is how you do something. I trust me, not so someone's like, you got to do it this way or you got to do it that way. It's just, this is how I do it. This is what works for me. And yeah, it's like those reels. Yeah, it's obviously luck, but that's my approach to it. Just something short to catch people's attention, I guess.
Super, super, super interesting insight.
So with the reels and stuff, like it doesn't happen instantly. Like that first one, it was like a month later. I don't know what set it off, what happened, but a month later it just kind of like exploded. I have no idea really what caused it, but yeah, people, like the one thing I noticed, like you can check the stats on it and stuff, but the one thing I noticed is lots of people sent it to somebody and lots of people saved it. So I think that was kind of something that plays into it. And I think that's part of it being, this is just my theory. Katie always says I have stupid theories all the time. But like my theory is like, it's something short and someone sends to their friend, says like, hey, check out this pizza, or like, wow, we should try and make pizza like this. You know, that's kind of what I think. That's at least what I think's happening. I don't really know.
That's like the essence of what social media is like you're sharing stuff with other people. And that's how virality works. It's like, oh, this is good enough for me to share to a friend. Instagram picks that up. They'll share to other people. They're like, oh, they're continuing to share it. Let's keep it going. I like that theory.
Yeah, I don't know if it's actually true or not, but that's what I think's happening, at least.
Did you start reels and then stop? Is there anyone that you like attribute to getting you started on the reels?
Mike, like Pizza in the Sack, Mike, we kind of become online buddies a bit. We chat all the time, but yeah, I saw him doing it and he was doing well, and I was like, oh, I should try this. Like, why not? Like, why not? You know, it's kind of fun. Well, I don't know. It's the new thing. TikTok's popping off. So like, I might as well try it. And that first one, so it's the one at the lake. There's another one that I posted before then that actually took off like later a little bit, but it's that one at the lake there. And it's just like over top. And I was like, I should try post a reel. So I just stood there and I pulled the pizza out of the oven, filmed it. And I wasn't even going to post it because the audio was terrible. Like I said, the roof was just pinging, or the rain, sorry, was pinging off the roof. His mom was making noise in the background. And I went like a week or something and I didn't have any posts. And I'm like, oh, I might as well just post this. And I just kind of blindly posted it. And then it just kind of went. So it was weird. Yeah.
I think there's one thing that you said earlier that like you do get some hate comments. So it's not like, it's not the best thing in the world to kind of blow up through reels, but I was reading through some of the comments and it's unbelievable how many times, like I think by now I know what the Italian word for burnt is, because a lot of Italian people, their comments, I had to look up that word that kept popping up. I think it was like, yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Google Translate. Yeah, you know it's so funny. Oh yeah. Yeah, I can't remember what it is. I haven't got one in a while. But I remember that like that first one I went and like I got like instantly it was like burnt. And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, it kind of hurt me a little bit. And then after I got like, I don't know, like 10 or 12 of them, I thought it was hilarious. So I was like sending screenshots to my friends and group chats, and they're like laughing. They think it's the funniest thing ever. So now they'll go and they'll comment on my videos. They'll be like, oh man, this pizza's so burnt. And like, they'll comment and say my pizzas are burnt all the time. It's so funny. They love it. They absolutely love it. It's hilarious. One of the funniest ones, someone was like, you just burnt the living shit out of that pizza, dude. Like, do better. That looks terrible. And I was like, oh, I can't remember if I replied or not, but I was like, man, yeah, like, you're right. Yeah, I need to do better. And it was fine. Like, it's just like, it's how I like my pizza. Like I said, I like char on it. So I get them a little bit charred. Like, it's just it's how I like it. And I have fun doing it. I enjoy it. Katie likes it. So I'm definitely not like a one to fight with people online. I don't really care.
Yeah.
Like I said at the start, like I do it because it's fun.
Yeah.
I like making pizzas and I'm going to keep doing it. And if they don't like it, that's fine.
What do you think is next for the reels? Like, do you think you're going to continue doing the pullout Cause, you know, one thing that you mentioned is like, does it grab their attention? And yeah, pulling a pizza out of an oven does grab attention because it's like, oh, it's the final moment. You know, it's ready. Do you have any other like things that you're trying out? What do you do to continue grabbing attention in the future?
Yeah, like that's a good question because I have noticed I have tried some different things and they haven't done as well. That Detroit style pizza I posted, oh, I love that thing. It was awesome. Like didn't do well, whatever. I don't really like. I'm not in it for like views and stuff. Like I said, I do it because it's fun. But yeah, I don't know. Like I've done some like I think it's just like a good way to like show the pizza. So I've done some, careful not to burn my hands, but putting my phone pretty close up to the pizza in the oven and stuff like that. And like those have also done fine. Like I think it's, yeah, like I've tried different stuff, like showing the flame lately, or showing the coals in the oven, stuff like that. Or I've got one, I haven't edited it yet, but you know, making a pizza on the side, like I push out the dough and stuff like that. And I do a little toss with it. I've been trying to do that lately. It's hard, but I've been working at it. And like, yeah, doing the slab technique and building a pizza and throwing it in the oven. Like I might do something like that in the near future, but yeah, like I don't, the views and stuff is nice, but it's not why I do it. I do it because it is fun. So like, if something doesn't work out, it's not really going to bug me, or if it doesn't get any views, I don't know. I don't really care. Like, so if I do that one, like make a pizza with me, we're making, well, at least this is the one I'm going to do. I think it was a sauce on top cheese. I love doing that. It's one of my favorites. I do it all the time, but
Me too.
yeah. So like at some point in the near future, I'm just going to edit that and I'll post it. It'll be longer than my 10-second little pull in the pizza out that gets a bunch of views, but I want to do that. And I want to practice editing videos and stuff because it's fun.
What do you use to edit for people who want to get their hands experimenting on reels?
I'll usually film the whole clip of me making the pizza. Like I'll throw it into the oven and I'll turn it, or sometimes I'll put a hole in it and then the whole thing catches on fire, or I'll drop it off camera sometimes. But I film the whole thing and then I just shorten it quickly. You can crop the length of it on your phone there. So I'll just crop the length of it and do it that way. But if I'm actually like stitching clips together, I'll do it in iMovie.
You said that you do it for fun, but like, why do you choose to post?
Like I like helping out if I can. If I can't help them, I'll just say, you know, like, hey, I actually don't know, or and I'll try to point them in the right direction. Like someone asked me the other day, like how to get a sourdough starter going, and I didn't have like I could describe it obviously, but I sent them the link to Christy's video and I said, hey, she's got an awesome video on how to get one going. And like, if you're struggling with it, like, let me know, but this is a really good starting point and it can really, really help you out.
It sounds like it's about helping others and really like kind of what you said in the beginning. It's about the community. And I feel like that's ultimately what brings you and I together, is that we both have a huge love for this community and we love contributing to it and just pushing pizza forward. I feel like that's the bigger kind of mission for the both of us, it seems. I don't know. Hopefully I'm not speaking for you, but
no. And like, it's fun. Like I said, it's fun. How many times am I going to say that? Right. Like if it, like if it wasn't, like, I wouldn't be doing it. Like the moment it becomes not fun, like I'm not really going to want to do it anymore. You know, like, it's got to be fun. And I do enjoy helping others if they're struggling. Like even like my buddies, they'll text me, they'll be like, hey, my sister-in-law, you know, got an uni, like she's having trouble launching it, like what does she need to do? And I'll, you know, give her some tips or whatever and help her out. Or someone say, oh, my dough is burning, and like what's wrong? The dough questions are hard because you need to see the whole process really to understand why something isn't happening. But I try to help as best I can. And like, I'm no expert. Like I've only been doing sourdough since April, May, maybe, but I've been doing it. Like I'm doing it all the time.
You're in it.
I'm in it. Like I'm deep in it. And like when I first started, I had that flour, water, salt, yeast, I think it's called, by Ken Forkish, I want to say. So I was reading that, and I one of the few times I followed a recipe to a T, and it was a bread recipe, and I was like, it just didn't work out. And I was like, why am I following this? He lives in San Francisco. Like that's that's just not at all like what the climate's like here, right?
That's funny.
So that was kind of like one point I was like, phew. And even like with yeasted doughs, I would follow them, that they'd be like knead for 10 minutes. I'm like, well, I don't want to knead it. I want to do stretch and folds, or I want to do like, I just kind of do my own thing a lot of the times. Like,
well, that's what makes you a better baker. It's just, figuring out what works for you and practicing.
Yeah. And I really like Mike's. I barely messaged Mike at all. Like sometimes I'll send him like a loaf of bread and be like, I made this. It was super good. And like, I loved his baking. So he has when his Pizza with Rose Hill Sourdough ebook came out, I didn't know he had the baking one. He's like, oh, my ebook's out, and he was promoting it. I'm like, oh, I got to get this, because like, obviously it's going to be great. So I went to go on his website, and I just scrolled down, and it's like purchase, and I purchased, and it was the baking one. So I'm like, oh, this is so awesome. These bread recipes and the cinnamon rolls. And he's like, yeah, that's the wrong book. He's like, no, that's the baking. There's this pizza one. And I was like, what? And then I looked, and I'm like, oh, so I got both now, obviously.
I need to mess with that book a little bit more. I haven't opened it as much as I should.
It's awesome. Like I've really gotten into bread lately, and I followed a lot of the principles in his book with the coil folds and stuff. Like I never tried a coil fold. I don't know why. I was just like, I hadn't seen it before, so whatever. And then it was in his book. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna try this. Or I tried his like auto leasing the dough. So like, that's another thing, is like with my recipes, I have different like levels depending on how much time I got. So like if I really want to do one, like I'll do an auto lease, and I'll do like a peaked culture, and like, so like peak my levain, and add the ingredients in a certain way and use certain techniques. But then like the other, like the 5-day sourdough I'm cooking with today, I am going to do cold fire with it though. So we'll see how it might not turn out, but, like that one, I just threw everything into a mixer, let it sit in the oven for 3 hours, and then that was it. And balled it and put it in the fridge. Like I've got different levels as to depending on how much time I got.
I think it was Foolproof Baking. She's a sourdough YouTuber, and she has an Instagram page. She was the reason why I started baking bread, she was the first person I was following to bake bread from. But like, I was just kind of copying her, not really knowing what to do. And then like, I don't even think I was doing it right. But then after seeing Mike and his videos and his explanation, that's what really helped.
Yeah. I didn't watch I didn't watch the videos, because I'm like, I gotta figure it out. Like I gotta do it. And the first time I did it, I ended up like tearing the dough on my last coil fold. I like tore it, and I was like heartbroken. Like, oh, like why? Cause but like that's part of it, right? So now I know, like, and in my head, I'm like, I feel like I don't need to do this, but I'm going to do it. And I did it, and it didn't work. So now I know, like, hey, if it's feeling that way, then I don't do it. Or the best tip, if you ever try to do bread, the best tip I ever got from, I think it was in one of his stories, was to do a bench rest with uncovered. And it was like on the uncovered detail was something I completely overlooked, because I was like, every time I did a bench rest, I would always cover it so it didn't dry out. But the whole point of the bench rest is to let it dry out, like the outside skin there. It helps like not stick to the banneton, and I also find it makes it really tight when you do the shaping.
Ooh.
It gets like a little less elastic, I think.
Interesting. I got a lot of practicing to do, man. All right. We're getting ready to wrap up here, and you know how it goes. We're going to be asking some quick fire questions about your dough, if you can, your pizza, and then we'll wrap up with the final 2 questions. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. What flour are you using?
Depends. So if I'm doing a long fermentation, I'll use pH milling. They have this. They call it their strong baker's flour. It's pretty cheap, honestly, but it's awesome. High protein content. Good for long fermentation. If I'm doing something shorter, like overnight, I'll use Molino Dalla Giovanna 00 flour mixed with Robin Hood whole wheat a little bit, and maybe a little bit of that pH milling too, just to give it a little extra strength.
Nice. Cheese?
Changes all the time. There's a Canadian brand, I think it's pronounced Santa Lucia, I think. But I get it at there's a local Italian grocers, and they have like high quality cheeses and tomatoes and stuff like that. So I'll often use that one. It's a fresh mozzarella. I've used Galbani low moisture mozzarella in the past as well. I really like that one. And I've also started to dabble in making my own cheese, man. It's tough. The flavor's good. I've been working on that. It's hard to get it to melt the way I like it though. So I've got to work at that still.
That I feel like would be a great post or IG reel. I'd love to see that. Just to educate me. I don't know if it'll get a lot of views, but I'd love it.
Yeah. I might do one. I've been using Josh Wiseman's recipe. I don't know if you know who he
YouTuber.
is. He's my favorite guy. I think he's hilarious. I love his videos. He's so funny. So I've got his cookbook and stuff, and it's in there. I use it, and I'm still practicing at it. It's not great, but like the melt story is not great. The flavor is unreal. It's so fresh tasting. Like it's just incredibly fresh.
Awesome.
It's nice.
Cool. What about tomatoes? What tomatoes are you using?
I usually use Moody Pulpa tomatoes, but I do also use sometimes 7-Elevens. And oh gosh, I can't remember the brand name. Starts with an S. Slipping my mind.
Stanislaus?
Stanislaus. Yes, Stanislaus 7-Elevens. I've used them in the past. That's usually when I'm doing my coal-fired ones. But if I'm doing Neapolitan, I'll use Rega, or I think it's pronounced Strinase. I don't know how to pronounce it. They're both DOP tomatoes.
What toppings do you love? I feel like I want to change this question up because it always, people are always asking. Post-bake, pre-bake, how many? What's your favorite toppings?
So my favorite topping, like all-time favorite, I just get it at the local grocery store, Safeway there. It's called a Spanish dry chorizo sausage. Oh, it's so good. It's got like the perfect amount of saltiness. It's not too greasy, like hence the dry part. So it doesn't, cover your pizza in grease. It gets if you cut it the right way, you'll get a nice little cup to it. It gets a good char. Char is nice because I love that char, all the people telling me it's burnt, but I just love it. It's the best. I love that with, jalapenos and red onions. I'll usually soak the red onions in the jalapenos just to get rid of the bite a little bit. That's my all-time favorite. And with some feta on there, some smoked Parmesan, and I like parsley. I love the look of it. Doesn't really add anything to the taste, but I love the look. So I like to add it.
Oven. What oven are you using?
Right now I'm using the Unikeru 16. I also have the 12. But I love that 16. It's sweet. It holds temperature well. Like it's -20 outside right now, 20 Celsius. And it holds the heat really well. I've been using just charcoal with it for the most part. But it takes a little bit longer to get hot, but it maintains the temperature for a long time, which is what I'm looking for, especially when it's that cold out.
If you were to describe your pizza in one sentence, kind of like an elevator pitch, how would you go about doing that?
Naturally leavened, nice and crispy, good amount of char, with some salty meats and nice little bit of crunch for some fresh veggies, I guess I would say. That's how I describe it.
Yeah.
That's how I like it. That's how I like it.
That sounds great. I'm hungry now. I know you're not in the business, but maybe from just an outsider's perspective, or maybe just any of your observations, what's one mistake that people can avoid in the pizza business?
Yeah. So like you said, I'm not really in the pizza business, but I've listened to every episode some a lot of times. And like a common theme is use high quality ingredients, use the best ingredients, and that's what it seems to be. That all the top pizza makers that you've had on, that's a common theme for them, is to use the best ingredients. So I think that'd probably be what I have to say. Use good quality ingredients.
I think that's such a great answer, especially coming from a home baker. Really, you can taste the difference for a lot of things.
You know, especially with like cheeses. Tomatoes is a big thing with tomatoes. Use those high quality tomatoes. Oh, it elevates the pizza so much.
What's crazy is like that's usually the number one thing people tell me when they eat my pizza. Oh my gosh, your sauce is so good. And I'm like, bro, it's just 7-Eleven tomatoes.
One thing I do a lot is when I have people over for pizza is I tell them to bite the crust first before they actually bite into the pizza. I say, taste the dough first. But yeah, like before you destroy your palate with all the cheese and sauce and toppings, taste the dough first and let me know what you think.
Yo, that is so, I'm going to steal that. That is so good. I usually go second bite for dough. But by then it's like I kind of know what my dough already tastes like. But for people not knowing what it is, it's like that's great. I love that.
It helps a lot too when I'm doing an experiment or a taste or something. You know, I'll taste the dough first or the crust first and see if it is too tangy or if it needs a little bit more tang, like just to my palate, obviously, but something I like to do.
That's perfect. Thank you for sharing. This was a fun interview. I have one final question for you. What is one thing you want to leave the audience with today?
Just have fun. Like, have fun when you're making pizzas. Don't let anyone discourage you. Just make what you want to make. Make what you want to make. Use yeasted dough. Use sourdough. I like sourdough, so use sourdough if you can. But yeah, just do you. Like it. Make stuff that you like to make. Like I use that dry Spanish chorizo. I don't know, a lot more than I should. I do sauce on top, cheese, way more than anything else too. Like just have fun with it. Make pizza you like. Have fun. That's the most important part.
I love that. Thank you, brother. Thank you for being on the show today. I really appreciate you making the time.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Real honor, long time fan. So we really appreciate being on. It was fun.